a tab, grab a seat, and pour a pint. It's time for the Beer Guys Radio Show.
You want free beer? Go to the brewery.
Dedicated to the art, science, and enjoyment of craft beer.
Yeah, what's wrong with the beer we got?
Now, here are your hosts, Tim Dennis and Brian Hewitt.
Welcome to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We are radio for the local craft beer movement. This week we're broadcasting from the Beer Guys Radio Studios at Ironmonger Brewing in Marietta, Georgia. I'm Tim Dennis.
And I'm Brian Hewitt. With the 4th of July just around the corner, we're talking beer and barbecue this week. We've got some pairing suggestions from your favorite backyard fare from the beer sommelier, Matt Simpson, and Brandon King from Stout Bros Smyrna Beer Market. How's it going, guys?
Howdy. How you doing, guys?
Good. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Glad to be here.
So, Tim, how was your week?
It was a good week, Brian. I did a lot. Had some beers, as you might expect. So I took a little trip over to Variant. They released their Good S'morning, which is a s'more stout, which, June is my favorite time to release a stout. I think it's appropriate.
It's a good call.
I had to go over there and get some of that. But really tasty beer. They're really killing it there. They had a line out the door, or a line for the door before they even opened up. Did really well there. Went over to Pontoon and sampled their Surf Rock Candy Shandy with pineapple and mango. And it's really good stuff. They're growing. They were putting in 2 new fermenters when I went over there. So they're expanding production.
They're really killing it. Yeah.
Good stuff, man. So how was your week?
So mine was less exciting than yours. A lot of times we hang out and do similar things regarding beer. And I spent a lot more time at a desk without beer.
Other obligations, right?
Yeah, sadly. But I did make it out to Sweetwater to drink a little bit more of that 420 strain G13 IPA with the Nappy Roots crew. That was really fun. Got to drink a Woodlands beer there that I don't think I'd had before called Back to Basic. It's a wild ale with a blend of wine and red wine barrel fermented.
So that's a newer one from them, right?
Yeah, and I love that.
It's really good.
That's the most crushable sour in that kind of strain of sours that I've had so far. I really wanted to take some back with me. I hope that they make that more widely available, perhaps in bottles or even cans. I mean, could you imagine that in cans? It'd be crazy.
However you can get it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when I did take a break from my desk during the week, I got into some of that Grasshopper Hype Whale, a little old burnt hickory charred walls from 2015, and even a rye on rye from Boulevard from 2015. So I hit the cellar a little bit.
All right. Have to do that sometimes, man. So we're out running around so much we don't get a time to do our cellars very often to dig into what we've got.
And it's nice to do that every now and then. It's like, hey, you know what? I've had this for a long time for me to drink and enjoy down the road. Now is down the road. Let's drink.
How soon is now, Brian?
Well, it was this week.
Good.
Now is this week.
Yeah. Matt, Brandon, you guys get into anything interesting this week?
Whiskey.
Drinking the whiskey.
Yeah, actually, whiskey was my week as well.
Okay. See, that's before we got on the air here. You said you suggested we do a little whiskey talk along with this too.
I just came back from vacation, and every time we go up to the woods of Vermont, probably about an hour from Hill Farmstead, and every time I go, and there's always sharing that goes on, and there are a lot of whiskey lovers up there, so I always bring a bottle of barrel proof something or other up there, and it needs to last the week, So the higher the proof, the longer it
more you
it
can
lasts,
stretch it
and
there, right?
and the wider and farther it goes. So.
Very cool. Awesome.
Yeah. Well, Tim, I think it's time for Truck and Tap's Beers of the Week.
Crack open a cold one. It's the Truck and Tap Beer of the Week. Woo-hoo! Craft beer and food trucks in downtown Woodstock. Truckandtap.com.
Brian, we've got a lot of great ones to drink and that we have drank. We prepped for this show with some barbecue and beer, as we should have done, because that's what we're talking about. Shout out to Loyal Q and Brew. They brought us a lot of barbecue.
Yes.
We have brisket, turkey. We had some brisket, turkey, ribs, baked beans, mac and cheese, all the fixings, and even banana pudding to wrap it up. So we did that, drank some beers, and talked about it. So we've got a lot of beers, maybe not necessarily the best for pairing, but good for enjoying. We have Creature Comforts Tiki Time and Get Artistic. We are drinking Ironmonger's Quench, and we have Wild Leap Alpha Abstraction, and one Matt brought from his cellar that was very cool for us to enjoy. Matt, that was Anchor's Our Special Ale. Is that correct?
The Christmas Ale, yep.
From 1986, right?
Yeah.
That was a very cool one to drink. So that was our beers. Well. Now let's see what's happening in the news.
What's in the news? The beer guys have the scoop.
Extra, extra, read all about it.
time for headlines.
All right, we've got a few quick updates from stories we reported last week. The first one is, rest assured, people, Russia has not run out of beer for the World Cup. There is not a shortage. Last week, we reported that fans were finding empty taps in various establishments while they were partying during the World Cup. This week, the deputy chairman of National Association of Guardians of Gastronomical Heritage and Tourism, that's a real job title.
There's a lot to that, man.
There is. And he's saying Russian breweries have been properly prepared to meet the high demand for beer during the World Cup in Russia so that fans will not feel any shortage of their favorite drinks. So fans are not feeling anything in terms of shortage.
That's right. Or anything else if they're doing it right.
Isn't that really the goal,
Probably not.
Yes, exactly.
If we drink much more of this 12% right here, we're not going to feel anything either.
That's exactly.
We got to pace it to the fourth segment, man. That's all. That's the plan.
We just got to survive. So we've got another update, and this one was probably predictable. We reported that Beavertown has sold a minority stake to Heineken last week, and a growing list of craft breweries are pulling out of their Beavertown 2018 extravaganza after the news. So it's not sure how much of the site is, or the brewery is owned by Heineken, but Cloudwater, Modern Times, and Brewdog aren't having any of it. And there are a number of venues around the UK that have also dropped their beer. So I think that's predictable. That's kind of what we've seen lately.
You know, I got some mixed reports on that. At one time I asked somebody if that was an issue in the UK, if they took selling out as seriously, and they told me no, that it really wasn't a big deal there. And I talked to someone else, and they said that's absolutely not true. It is just as big of a deal there, except maybe different targets. You know, Guinness over there is one. I think Diageo is
depends who you ask.
Right, yeah, it depends on who you ask with that. But they said, of course, it's a big deal, and we kind of see this with Beavertown. They sell a minority stake, and just like when Wicked Weed sold and everybody pulled out of their Invitational, same thing there. So, yeah.
Well, but I think the biggest difference there, at least in my opinion, is who's buying them out. When you look at Heineken and their history and where they come from and what their perspective on beer is on a worldwide scale versus that of an InBev, and in my opinion, from what I've read, InBev's desire to almost destroy the craft beer market versus Heineken's desire to actually just grow worldwide. To me, that makes a big difference on how I would perceive that brand and that purchase and that buyout.
They are still using those green bottles, though.
Yeah,
well, they do. They are.
It's a feature, not a fault.
Actually, you know, at Doemens, one of my certifications, Siebel Doemens Bier Sommelier, and that was one of the questions we asked the professor was, hey, you know, why are these huge companies that obviously know better still using green and clear bottles? And his answer was genius, really. He said they've trained their demographic to yearn for that flavor profile.
Oh, it's a marketing.
They would like and demand that skunked type beer.
Interesting stuff.
That's
crazy.
Yeah.
And that's funny, too. Like, if you drink Heineken out actually in the Heineken brewery in Amsterdam, it tastes completely different than the Heineken that we drink here.
Yep.
It would have to.
Like fresh, it's actually beer that I would drink regularly versus I won't drink.
I've heard that from those that have had it.
From a can or a keg.
Yeah.
Absolutely. A tap.
Sure. And I have some more interesting big news, and this is from the Trappist world. We've got monks in the Mount St. Bernard Abbey that have brewed the first official English Trappist ale. So it's the 12th brewery to be officially recognized as Trappist, and their beer is called Tint Meadow. It's named for the meadow that the monks settled in back in 1835, and the word is this beer has been brewed to suit English palates and will be different from other Trappist beers out there. Reportedly, it's somewhere between a brown ale and a barley wine, and it's less sweet, a little drier. So
Sounds like a double almost. Like a Belgian
kind
double,
of, except possibly a bit drier. It's not clear when we'll see it, maybe on this side of the pond, but they are releasing it there at the Abbey on July 9th. And it's going to be the first time beer has been brewed by monks in England since the Protestant Reformation.
How about that? That's pretty interesting. More Trappist beer getting out there, getting around.
It's neat how Trappist breweries are expanding. We're getting more of them. They used to run a dairy. Yeah. They switched over because, hey, they couldn't pull it off with the dairy. It was unsustainable.
Crazy stuff. You're listening to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We do need to take a quick break, but we'll be back very soon to talk beer and barbecue.
If you love wild, sour, and barrel-aged beers, be sure to check out the amazing offerings from Sweetwater's Woodlands, the Atlanta Brewery's barrel-aging facility. For the serious craft beer fan, the Woodland Circle Beer Club offers members 6 unique exclusive bottles plus other great perks. Series 2 is starting soon with more creative offerings from Cellarman Nick B. Visit the Woodlands in Atlanta, Georgia, follow Sweetwater Brew on social media, or get more information and sign up at sweetwaterbrew.com/club. That's sweetwaterbrew.com/club.
It's Aaron and Tim, the beer guys. If you're like us, no lunch or dinner is complete without a pint or two of craft beer.
Which is why Truck and Tap in downtown Woodstock and Alpharetta are always on our list. Tim, why do they call it Truck and Tap?
Well, the tap part is easy, Aaron. See, they've got 18 of them.
As for the truck part, well, that's when it gets interesting. Truck and Tap features your favorite Atlanta area food trucks daily, so that way you're getting a different menu every day.
Truck and Tap in downtown Woodstock, Alpharetta, and coming soon to Duluth in 2018. Truckandtap.com. Let them know that the beer guys sent you.
Follow the Beer Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Well, I'm sure I'd feel much worse if I weren't under such heavy sedation.
Now, back to the Beer Guys radio show.
Welcome back to the Beer Guys Radio Show. For more great craft beer info, visit us on the web at beerguysradio.com. We're broadcasting from the Beer Guys Radio Studios in Ironmonger Brewing in Marietta, Georgia. And we're talking beer and barbecue this week with Matt Simpson and Brandon King.
Guys, thanks again for joining us, sharing some beers and some Q with us. We appreciate it.
So, anytime. Sure. Glad to be here.
I'm going to let folks know a little more about who we've got here behind the microphone today. So, Matt, we're going to start with you. Matt Simpson, you are the beer sommelier. How do you pronounce sommelier?
It depends what kind of person you want to be.
Okay, because I know I've heard it different from different people. I say sommelier. Is that good enough?
Yeah, it works. It works. Technically, I think the French steward pronunciation is sommelier.
Sommelier.
Okay.
That sounds fancy.
You'll never hear me say it that way, though.
All right.
I'm just going to call you a Cicerone. Is that all right?
Oh. Cicerone. The Cicerone. So you're also a Kansas City Barbecue Society certified barbecue judge, correct?
These are two of my favorite.
These are two of my favorite. Are you a whiskey judge? Do they have a?
They do, but I'm not, and I would love to be someday. Okay. I've been looking into it.
What else should people know about the beer expert, the beer sommelier?
There's not a lot to say. We've got a lot. We've got a whole lineup of services from corporate events to startup consultation, expert legal witness testimony. Got Beer Aid as a product. It's my only product.
So much stuff. And people can find out more at thebeerexpert.com.
Thebeerexpert.com.
Very cool. Brandon King, you are a restaurateur, a entrepreneur. You currently own the Stout Brothers Smyrna Beer Market, correct? Is that the full name of it? Did I get that correct?
The Smyrna Beer Market by the Stout Brothers.
By the Stout Brothers.
Yes.
I just call it Smyrna Beer Market or Stout Brothers. Is that acceptable?
There's a wide array of things that are acceptable. Stouts, amongst other things. Although there used to be a Stouts Growlers, which was a little confusing. But they've passed by the wayside from my understanding.
Okay.
So.
And what else should people know about Brandon King?
Well, I mean, we've got... I'm also part of Natural Progression, which is a... restaurant and bar and brewery consultation company, as well as a promotional company for all promotional goods related to beer and brewing and restaurants, and anything you possibly need, T-shirts and everything else.
Very cool. That's a lot of services there.
Yeah. I'm kind of a jack of all trades, master of none.
Awesome.
We should talk.
Maybe there you go. Team up,
collaborate,
there, right?
Yeah.
We can
make it magic.
Perhaps even on a radio show.
I know.
We could
right. So
to start a brand new relationship.
Screw these guys, and we'll just talk over them.
That's it. Should we just sit back and let
Sorry,
you know?
guys. It's our show now.
It's your show now. This has been taken over.
We have enough beer and whiskey. We can definitely make this happen.
That's right.
It's true.
That's it.
So I've been corrected in the past for using the term barbecue as a catch-all for anything that's cooked over a flame, but that's not right. What is actually a barbecue, Matt?
Well, if you're in the north, you would go to a barbecue, but you wouldn't be eating barbecue. Right. Barbecue has to be cooked over smoke, low and slow for a long period of time. Meats, generally speaking. Really, what you're talking about is grilling, which is fine, and it makes food taste great. We've been doing it for millennia.
Sure.
As a species, but it's different. It's fast and it's broiled, and the flavor is completely different. It takes a long time to break down really onerous cuts of meat that would otherwise be inedible to make them like meat candy in the end, smoked and
is the smoke part a requirement to be barbecue?
Yes.
If it's just slow and low heat but no smoke?
Then it's not real barbecue.
Okay, fair enough.
Then it's just braised or whatever you want to call it.
Then it's just slow roasted meat,
just slow
right?
roasted meat.
Okay, fair enough. So, guys, let's start out simple. Let's say I'm going to do a cookout. I'm going to grill. I'm going to fire up some burgers and dogs and just keep it simple. We want to let folks know ahead of 4th of July here, getting ready for the 4th of July weekend, if I have a simple backyard cookout, what kind of beers should I have there with my burgers and dogs? Brandon, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I think if you're just sticking with burgers and dogs in the northern sense of what a barbecue is, then I think you really stick with some pub favorites. You stick with lagers, especially darker lagers and ambers. Those tend to be good for both refreshing the palate and going well with just all the different condiments you're going to put on all of your different burgers and dogs and such.
Just nothing complicated. Keep the KISS principle, right?
Yeah, keep it simple, stupid.
Okay.
Now, I think one of the things we had discussed was pre-grilling and everything else, which that is the only time you should ever use anything fruited, like a fruited goza or anything along those lines.
Okay. I was going to ask about those, the new wave of fruited and lactose. Matt was telling me he loves the new lactose IPAs. So
and all the milkshakes,
right? Get off my lawn.
If you're going to a grill out or a barbecue, the only time that during that process that those things would be appropriate, in my opinion, would be during the very beginning as you're starting in, as those tend to be low gravity to kind of ease in, but they are not going to pair well with properly done smoked low and low meat.
So you probably should just drink those while you're doing your grilling or barbecuing and have them out of the way.
Or believe it or
food's
not,
ready.
They go really well with some desserts like fruits. If you have watermelon and cantaloupe and some other whatever sliced apples in a big bowl, a Goza or a Berliner Weiss will go really well with those. So you get that sort of lemony, citrusy tartness that goes really well with fruit as well. It's the same reason a lot of people add fruit syrup, at least they do in Germany, fruit syrups to Berliner Weisses. They're harmonious. They really go very well together. Sweet and tart. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, so would you have paired a Goza up with the banana pudding we had earlier on?
I would not.
No.
Would not? Okay.
No, only because the banana pudding lends more to sort of creamy vanilla, different kind of desserty notes, not sharp acidic, you know?
Okay.
So. Makes sense. Yeah, I get that. Sure enough. Yeah. So let's say we get into some real barbecue here, guys. We've got a lot of different kind of barbecue we can consider. We're in Georgia, so it's about pork, big old pork butts on the grill and enjoying that. So if I slow smoke me a nice pork butt and I chop it up, what beer am I going to grab to go with my chopped or pulled pork?
Well, if you've chopped it, you haven't cooked it long enough.
Okay. You should be able to pull it and shred it apart.
I was going to ask about that, pulled versus chopped.
Well, so typically what it is in order to be able to pull it, you really need to, after you pull it off the grill, after that 4 to 6 hours, depending on your heat level, letting it rest covered for an additional hour or so is going to allow you to do the pull versus end up having to chop. The juices haven't come back in to really absorb into it. Depending on the amount of char, exactly, that rest really helps. Depending on the amount of char that you've got on the outside, and depending on what kind of marinade and or sauce you're putting on it, stouts are always a good way to go. They kind of pull out all of those roasted coffee chocolate notes that you can get from that char. Yeah,
because really it's balance. You're going for mellow. You don't want in the food beer equation. You don't want one side to overpower the other. And big dark roasty beers can stand up very well to dark roasted meats, especially smoked meats, without overpowering them. So there's a lot of balance there. Likewise, you can do, as I was mentioning earlier, you can do sort of the wash down principle, which is give me a pale lager, give me a PBR in as big and cheap a can as possible. Mm-hmm. And I'll drink that with barbecue any day of the week. Not only because it's traditional in the South, but because it really just washes it down really well without being
it's a palate cleanser.
Yeah, without being offensive or without being overpowering. So
no nonsense beer. It's That's not right. about. In this case, it's not about the beer. It's
any craft lager,
cleanse the palate.
Any lager, and PBR isn't a craft lager, but it's any lager. It could be a pale lager, could be a pilsner, it could
Mexican
be a
lagers
Kolsch.
Even do it.
Yeah, anything like that. Exactly.
So would you say that these general principles hold true for brisket as well, or are we we've gone into a different meat, so we're looking at
brisket is barbecue. I mean,
as opposed to pork,
Well,
pork versus
pork can be. Will ribs be different than pulled pork, or is the roast meat family altogether?
I can only speak for myself. I don't make a distinction among those meats, because at that point I think you're picking nits.
And it depends on your fat content too. I mean, if you're looking at it more of a loin versus a butt on pork versus a fattier rib, your baby back versus your St. Louis, or your brisket, which tends to be even more fatty. A lot of times the fattier the meat, I almost want to go with West Coast IPA to have that bitterness kind of cut through some of that fat.
Very cool. Well, guys, we do need to take another break. You're listening to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We're talking beer and barbecue, offering some pairing tips for the 4th of July celebration. We'll be back with more talk right after this.
Craft beer forged with a reverence for tradition and new styles that start a revolution. Ironmonger Brewing. The brewers at Ironmonger Brewing pride themselves at being masters of barrel-aged, hoppy, and sour beers. They invite you to their tap room in Marietta, Georgia to taste and see. Also visit their barrel room for an intimate drinking experience with great live entertainment. Keep up to date on all things Ironmonger by liking them on Facebook. Ironmonger Brewing, establishing a new standard in craft beer.
We are Reformation Brewery, celebrating the reformer in you. Locally crafted within the renowned Etowah watershed of Woodstock, Georgia, Reformation creates yeast-forward brews full of aroma and flavor crafted to last. Come see us in beautiful Woodstock, Georgia, for a tour and tasting of unique brews that you can't find anywhere else. Reformation Brewery. Set beer free. ReformationBrewery.com.
Follow the Beer Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
He hates these cans! Stay away from the cans!
Now, back to the Beer Guys Radio Show.
And welcome back to the Beer Guys Radio Show. Since we're talking beer and barbecue this week, we'd like to give a shout out to another great show. If you're looking for some barbecue advice, check out Meat Masters Radio. You can subscribe to their podcast or listen to them on many of the same radio stations as Beer Guys Radio. We'll get back to beer and barbecue talk soon, but first Tim and I stopped by Sweetwater's Woodlands recently to talk with their lead brewer, Nick B., about what's coming out from the Woodlands and Series 2 of their Circle Beer Club. Let's check it out.
Welcome, you're listening to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We are at Sweetwater Brewing. We're with Nick B. Nick B is the man in charge of the Woodlands plan over there. Nick, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, Nick, we're drinking something new here, something new but with a familiar name. What can you tell us about that?
So what you got there is Through the Brambles. So this year was a little bit different. We got our oak foeders in this last year. So the first one was white wine barrels with blackberries. We actually added them to the barrels. Sounds great, but it's a kind of logistical nightmare. So this year we've got the French or American oak foeders, and we added 3,000 pounds of local blackberries straight to the foeder, and it's the same beer in essence, but slightly different. A lot more fruit in this
Tasty
one.
Beer. So Nick, one of the main things we're here to talk about today is the Woodlands Circle Beer Club.
That's
For those
right.
that don't know, the Woodlands does barrel-aged wild sour beers. You got a very cool club. What can you tell us about that?
It's just we wanted to do something that was, an exclusive club that we could kind of showcase some of the things that we kind of want to do, but for, volume reasons, we can't really do it on a large scale, and, kind of a playground to see, what works. Different spirit barrels, not just wine, bourbon, just, predominantly. But, we've even used, like, tequila. We've got some mezcal barrels right now, rum barrels. It's kind of been a barrel circus over there. So it's kind of give us a chance to showcase what we're doing and, kind of make people feel like they're part of something.
And so the Woodland Circle is, you do it in a series format. And
Right.
Series 1 just completed, and I think you're getting ready to start Series 2 with this, right?
We are, yeah. So the first one was, right off the bat, very experimental. We're gonna stick with that same theme. Also gonna centralize on more of the things that were a hit on the first one, like the imperial stouts with adjuncts, which everybody loves. We're gonna come back with probably 2 of those instead of 1. Some interesting things. Kind of lead off with, here's a little preview. It's going to be a gin barrel-aged grisette.
Very nice. I'm looking forward to that one. I like Saison grisette are similar to each other, and I've really been interested. I think the flavors now will go good with the gin barrel.
And I think, that gin barrel is just going to pop with a beer like that that's, typically lower in, everything.
Very cool.
Yeah. So, Nick, I heard that we have you have a bit of a hookup for our listeners potentially on these clubs.
Yeah, that's true. We're running a special right now. If you purchase 1 membership, you get a second one at 20% off. So if you want to buy one for, friend or loved one, beer buddy, or as, as a gift. We kind of want to make it easy for people to sign up and give them some incentives to do so.
Drink one now, drink one later.
Drink one now, drink one later. You can do that too. Just trying to get it out in people's hands.
And I think that the club, you get 6 bottles, right?
That's
6
correct.
500 milliliter bottles.
Yep.
You get a $25 bar tab.
You do.
A shirt. Is that right? And I think you get to come stay at your house one night. Is that?
I don't know about that one.
No, the rest of it's true though, right?
Unlimited high fives. I heard that.
All the high fives.
All the high fives you can stand.
And Nick, with these Woodlands beers, you've actually got a special beer dinner coming up. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Really excited about it. We've never really planned a beer dinner and had one on site before, been involved in them. But we've got a local hometown favorite that we're hopefully going to be working with. Still ironing out the details, so don't want to say too much. But it's really exciting. We're going to get a chance to showcase Woodlands beers and also their great Southern food.
Awesome. Secret stuff, but they'll find out soon enough, right?
Yeah. We want members to sign up for it, but I think we're also going to open it up to the general public if members aren't, which I don't see how you couldn't be interested.
Come get in it, right?
Yeah.
Beer, food, what's not to love?
Yeah, exactly. So that's super exciting. And hopefully, if this one goes well, do more in the future.
Awesome. Well, Nick B., thanks so much for joining us, telling us about the Woodlands Beers of Woodland Circle. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks a lot.
And a huge thanks to Nick B. for joining us, filling us in on what is going on at Sweetwater Woodlands. Always cool, Brian, to hear the funky, sour, wild stuff coming up there.
Absolutely.
Really looking forward to it. So, guys, just before the break, we were talking beef versus pork in that at the time. And I know, Matt, you said you're of the school of thought. Not a big difference in those two. Those darker meats, they're barbecued meat. And
now when it comes to
similar pairings, right?
Yeah, in my mind, yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, let's move into the world of poultry. If we're doing chicken or turkey, something along those lines, what kind of beers are we going to look for that? So, and I do want to say, Loyal Q, that I mentioned they brought us some barbecue, their smoked turkey is phenomenal. Mm-hmm. I love brisket and ribs and all that, but that was a really good smoked turkey.
Moist is imperative when it comes to turkey, especially breast, and this was very good.
So when I go over and I get some more of that smoked turkey, what beer should I grab to go with?
All right, well, I'd probably say that I definitely want something a little bit lighter, probably on maybe a wheat or a tart wheat side. This is the only time I really think that style of beer fits into this genre is with a chicken. But again, that also depends on how much char you're putting on the chicken and what you're marinating and or saucing it with. The more tomato based, the more like big flavors, bold flavors you're going to put on that chicken, the more you're going to move to something a little bit darker, possibly even into the sour category, but not too far. You don't want it too tart to overpower the chicken.
So you're thinking something along the lines of Berliners? I mean, in that range, or are we even going back towards maybe like a wheated Saison or something like that?
I'd even push more towards the Saison. I think the going too tart or too sour would be too much. Even too much Brett would be overpowering. But just a little bit of that funk might pair well with
some Saisons or Grisette, something along those lines.
I was thinking double. Right? In fact, any barbecue you got to get past the smoke first. And in order to do that, you need a beer with some chew. You need something with enough heft to make it past the smoke. That said, obviously, by the time you get through the smoke and to the meat, it's lighter. And I wouldn't go as big and stouty and roasty as I would with dark meats, pork and beef, but something like a Belgian double, something like a brown ale, a big brown ale, maybe
a Rauch beer.
Maybe a Rauch if it's really been smoked for a long time, because most Rauches that I know are really kind of
belong in the garbage disposal.
Yeah. So, well,
I'm just saying.
I love them. Tim hates them.
I like them.
Yeah. It depends on the beer, especially if it's a good.
It depends on my mood.
It'll be all right.
But something big enough to make it through the smoke, but not overpower the turkey once you get there.
Again, you have to go back to what you mentioned before about finding balance between what it is you're eating and what it is you're drinking. You don't want one to overpower the other. You want to complement.
Yep.
Okay, and the complement versus contrast and all of that. So there's a lot of different directions you can go with all of that.
Yep.
So,
correct.
Now, talking about the tart beers or Berliners and that, if we have a lighter one with just a touch of tart, we had that tart wheat from Creature Comforts today, their tart wheat. Is that going to be too much tart? Are we going a little too far there?
I think with chicken, yes. I think that beer in general, while it is absolutely delicious, it falls in the category of your prep time and starting the coals up segment of barbecuing versus pairing itself.
Fair enough. Guys, we're just blazing through this today. We're actually up to another break. So you're listening to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We are talking beer and barbecue. We're going to talk more about it here in just a minute.
Are you thinking about opening a brewery in the Atlanta area? If so, take a look at the Park at Georgetown. This unique community will feature a collection of restaurants as well as a craft brewery located within the new J.W. Holmes luxury development, Dunwoody Green. Conveniently located less than half a mile from I-285, this enclave of restaurants will be the gathering place in Dunwoody. Trim & Associates, the developer of the Park at Georgetown, wants to talk to you. For more information, call Stephen St. Paul at 404-256-2960, extension 5. That's 404-256-2960, extension 5.
The Old 320 Beer Fest returns to Max Lagers in Atlanta, Georgia on July 21st, 2018. Attendees can enjoy unlimited beer samples from over 30 of the best southern breweries, an orphan bottle share, a chef's tasting room with gourmet bites from brewed to serve chefs, and live entertainment from Grateful Dude and Friends. Plus, enter the raffle for a chance to win an ultimate beer tour of Belgium and Germany with Brewtopia events. Find the Old 320 Beer Fest on Facebook or Fresh Tix for more info or to purchase your tickets now.
Follow the Beer Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
To be the man, you gotta beat the man. Woo!
Now, back to the Beer Guys Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Beer Guys Radio Show. Make sure you follow us on the socials, Beer Guys Radio on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We're broadcasting from the Beer Guys Radio studios at Ironmonger Brewing, and we're talking beer and barbecue with Matt Simpson and Brandon King.
Guys, thanks again for joining us. We've got a lot of talk off the air today, and I just want to let our listeners know, if you're listening to this on the radio, we're going to do an extra segment after the full radio show where we just go a little freeform with these guys. So tune in and check that out. Podcast only. Available only on the podcast, Brian, FYI.
FYI,
so now
yes.
you know. So, guys, we want to talk a little bit about kind of non-traditional or what would you consider barbecue. And, Matt, based on our earlier discussions, this may not even be barbecue. Maybe just some grilling stuff. But you can smoke salmon. So you could technically have barbecued salmon then, right?
You can have grilled salmon.
Okay.
You can smoke salmon.
Right.
There's lox. There's all sorts of things.
Okay.
There's ways to. Technically, smoked salmon is different than lox. But
yeah.
Well, those are cold smoked, though, correct?
You can do cold smoking. You can do all sorts of stuff.
Isn't that the lowest and slowest of smoking? I'm like, that's
very low.
Cold is very
cold,
low,
yeah,
right?
That's very low.
Like you really don't want any heat so much on the fish. It's all about the smoke in that.
It's so
right?
tender. Yeah, it falls apart if you heat it.
You're more just you kind of cure it with a salt cure.
You can do that,
and then put the smoke through it, right?
You don't have to. You can dry rub it and still cold smoke it.
Okay. So let's say I've got some smoked salmon and I want to have a beer to go with that. Mm-hmm. Matt, smoked salmon, what beer do I want?
I'm going with a Belgian. I would go with a Saison. I would go with a blonde, maybe a double. If it's got some sort of creamy sauce, maybe a triple, as high as that, because it is still rich and fatty. It's a fatty fish. So I would say that's as high as I would go in body and ABV. But I love the Belgians when it comes to fish, just because they're sort of floral, not a lot of hops. Maybe a good German lager, maybe a Marzen, something like a Marzen would go really well. Something without a lot of hops to sort of get in the way of the delicate flavor of the fish, but still enough beer to get through the smoke, if you're going to be actually smoking.
Now, how about we're just firing up the grill and we've got some whitefish out there. We've got, a trout or maybe some tilapia that we're just throwing on the grill. What are we going to go with for just a grilled fish, Brandon?
Actually, I'd probably say that while his pairings with salmon would work, I would use those same pairings with a whitefish. I myself would probably go with more of an acidic sour with a salmon to cut through the fat. But I really like the more of the clean, light Pilsner lager and to go with a whitefish, because the whitefish is going to be extremely delicate, and it doesn't matter what you throw on top of it, it's going to remain delicate. So, and you don't want anything that's going to overpower that.
But if you take a beer like a Pilsner with something as fatty and rich as a salmon, it's probably just going to roll over. It's not going to do much for you, right?
Yeah. Correct.
Okay. Yeah. Now, one more quick question. If we got some vegetarian friends at the cookout, and we're all eating barbecue, but we've done them a portobello cap. Maybe we've grilled some asparagus. What kind of beer do we want if we're just grilling some veggies?
I mean, Flemish Reds to me are going to go really well with that, especially with the portobello, just because that's almost like the steak of the vegetarian world when it comes to grilling. That's going to have the body and the acidity, the composure to really match up to that portobello.
So if I have a big portobello cap and a Flemish Red, I'm set then. A portobello burger, Flemish Red.
I'd actually go with a German Pilsner, I think, because of the acidity of the noble hops on the back end. You get that sort of finish, that tight hoppy bite on the back end that I think would really cut through the chewiness of the
So
mushroom.
what we're seeing here, there's a lot of flexibility in your pairing. You can make a choice that fits your palate to go with that. There's some that you want to avoid, maybe, but there's more open forum for pairing.
No wrong way to do it.
Well, no, and that's something I think that we've really seen too with when it comes to wine and food pairings that people have really discovered. People always used to say, white with fish and chicken and red with beef and pork and things like that. But when it comes down to it, whether it's beer or wine, it's whatever suits your palate the best. Yep. Are there things that are going to necessarily pair better? Yes, but are things that are going to really not work? Yes, but it's everybody's individual palate that's going to make the biggest difference.
What I tell people is, at the end of the day, if you've got good food and you've got good beer, you're still going to have good food and good beer.
Right.
So
that's a
how
great
wrong
point.
can you really go?
Exactly.
So one of the things we talked about earlier is when you change up the sauce or like the dry rub or something like that, that changes what you pair, right? Because that makes a huge impact on the flavor. Is that more of a change than the meat itself? And what are some kind of sauces and pairings that you would recommend in terms of beer if you're just looking at that sauce or just looking at that dry rub?
It depends. I mean, if you're going with a big sort of Texas sweet sauce, you're going to want to up whatever the body is of that beer. Instead of, say, a brown ale or a dry stout, you may want to go with something a little bit larger, like an export stout or like a Belgian double, something that's like 6-7%.
Even quad at that point, yeah.
Yeah, something a little bit bigger, something with a little more heft and chew. That'll make it through a Weissenbach, something that's got something that'll make it through the
Weissenbach would be good.
Would a quad sauce with all that sweetness that they tend to have, would that be too much if you had the sweet sauce and the quad together?
Could make it. A quad could,
or
do
is it complementary?
Yeah. If it's a dry quad and it's not like crazy sweet with a ton of residual sugar, it can work.
Well, I mean, like for instance, like the quad that we're sitting here drinking now from Hardywood. I mean, that's not nearly as chewy as most quads. Like that
6%, 12% quad.
Yes, our session quad that we've discovered would actually probably do.
We actually
well
caught when we had them on the show a couple weeks ago. We said it's a session quad. They're like, absolutely.
Yeah,
that's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's painfully good. So that's something that would pair well with that. I mean, it almost drinks as a double at that point. So
now something along the sauce lines that I think a lot of the country may not know about. I discovered it recently, but Alabama has an Alabama white sauce. Mm-hmm. So a little chicken. This is mayonnaise, vinegar, sugar, I think, based, and this one actually goes on after you finish smoking your chicken.
It's almost better as a dipping sauce at that point than it is an actual mopping sauce.
Pull you a little chunk off your chicken and
then
dip away.
And actually, to be fair, that a properly done Alabama white is good on damn near anything. I mean, I'll put it on brisket. I'll put it on you name it. I'll
Really?
dip it in. Oh, absolutely. Because when it's done properly, again, you're whipping the solids out of it, so it's not going to be thick like you'd have a ranch or anything like that. It's actually thin like you'd find in a regular barbecue sauce, and the flavor is paired. It's got just enough spice. I know you're a regular at the Nest still, my former establishment, and then we used to do a sriracha white there, and the spice that played with that was phenomenal.
We've experienced
literally
the
anything.
rainbow of sauces there, so
Right.
we try them all out.
I mean, literally, you can put that on anything, and it's delicious.
Very cool. So, desserts, guys. Talking some about desserts. We had a banana pudding today. Matt, banana pudding, what are you pairing with that?
My first inclination to go with you're going to think I'm crazy. Well, maybe not. There are a bunch of things you can do. But I would think double Bach, actually, because it's got that sort of like toffee, vanilla, middle-of-the-road body and ABV. And I think it's big enough to make it through and stand up to the sugars and all the sort of vanilla banana-y yummy goodness of the dessert.
So like Samet Claus, that session Doppelbock?
The problem with Sammy is that it's just so huge. We were talking earlier about fruits and desserts, typical picnic grilling barbecue desserts, watermelon, cantaloupe,
grilled peaches.
Grilled peaches, grapes, things like that, fruit skewers. And today's tarts, the sours, gozas, Berliner Weisses would go really well with those because the acidity cuts through and it's still fruity.
I think for the banana pudding, though, I would have to go with, as much as the Weizenbachs are delicious, a bourbon barrel-aged triple to me. But again, that's just part of the Southerner in me that, even though I'm from the North, I'm an adopted Southerner at this point after 20-plus years.
Yeah, you're down here long enough.
I've been here
right.
We're damn Yankees.
We are damn Yankees. But I've had one of my friends, Carrie Brown, makes a phenomenal Woodford Reserve banana pudding, and ever since then,
you're killing it.
The thoughts of bourbon involved in any way in banana pudding are just perfect to me. So incorporating.
I can't argue with that.
Yeah.
Or perhaps some banana cognac.
Banana cognac. Now you're talking my language,
that's
Brian.
not a
Let's
thing.
do this.
It could be.
It could be. Yes.
Let's make it happen.
It isn't yet.
Actually, there's a rum called Bumbu out of Guatemala that literally tastes like banana pudding, and so I would pair that any day of the week just by itself, like not even rocks.
That sounds good to me. I'll give that a shot.
Right.
Yeah. But, guys, real quick, Matt Simpson, the beer sommelier. More information available at thebeerexpert.com. You can get him to talk at your event, do a tasting, a pairing for you, whatever you need to do. We have Brandon King. He is with Smyrna Beer Market, Stout Brothers, whatever you call it. You can follow them along on Facebook or give them a visit there in Smyrna, Georgia. Also, once again, a shout-out to Loyal Q and Brew for providing us some barbecue. We really appreciate it. We enjoyed it quite a lot. You can follow Loyal Q and Brew on Facebook. That's Loyal, the letter Q, or visit them in Marietta or Alpharetta, Georgia. Guys, thanks again for joining us. We really do appreciate it.
Glad to be here.
Cheers. Thanks for having me.
Well, that about wraps it up for this episode. Coming up next week, we're going to be talking with Chris Meadows from Elkmont Exchange in Knoxville, Tennessee. Remember to subscribe to Beer Guys Radio on iTunes or your favorite podcasting app, and please leave us a review. If you enjoy the show, consider sending us a boatload of money. We accept Venmo, PayPal, and large unmarked bills. As an alternative, you can also support us on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/beerguys. We've got some really cool perks for our supporters there. Thanks again for tuning in. Have a great week. Enjoy your 4th of July, and don't forget to drink local. Cheers.
It's Aaron and Tim, the beer guys. If you're like us, no lunch or dinner is complete without a pint or two of craft beer. Which is why Truck and Tap in downtown Woodstock and Alpharetta are always on our list. Tim, why do they call it Truck and Tap?
Well, the tap part is easy, Aaron. See, they've got 18 of them.
As for the truck part, well, that's when it gets interesting. Truck and Tap features your favorite Atlanta area food trucks daily, so that way you're getting a different menu every day.
Truck and Tap in downtown Woodstock, Alpharetta, and coming soon to Duluth in 2018. Truckandtap.com. Let them know that the beer guys sent you.
Craft beer forged with a reverence for tradition and new styles that start a revolution. Ironmonger Brewing. The brewers at Ironmonger Brewing pride themselves at being masters of barrel-aged, hoppy, and sour beers. They invite you to their tap room in Marietta, Georgia to taste and see. Also visit their barrel room for an intimate drinking experience with great live entertainment. Keep up to date on all things Ironmonger by liking them on Facebook. Ironmonger Brewing, establishing a new standard in craft beer.
And welcome to the 5th segment of the Beer Guys Radio Show. We just had too much to talk about, so we're throwing this little extra together for our podcast listeners. We're going to freestyle this, Brian. We're just going to go.
It sounds dangerous.
We're going to see what comes up with it. If you hear a little bit of buzz, we got a fan going in the background because it's a little warm here, but we figured we'd get a little lax since we are doing this as an extra. It is the 5th segment. If we, as bad as the 4th segment is, Brian, there's no telling what to expect out of the 5th
I've already
segment.
unbuttoned my pants, so we're at that level right now.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. And Brian's got some. What's that, Matt?
Free bird.
Free bird.
Can we swear on this segment?
Free bird. Can we do what in this one?
Can we swear on this segment?
No, we're going to still keep it clean.
Okay.
We're still going to
keep it family friendly. Okay.
Yeah, we have to put a little tag on our podcast saying if it's explicit.
Oh, okay.
So we'll leave it out so we don't have to tag it as explicit. So, but once we cut the mics off, you can say whatever you want.
Whatever I want.
That's right. Exactly. So very cool. Brian, you actually got some 5th segment questions going over there, didn't you?
I do. I've been talking with the guys for a little bit, and one of the things I was thinking was we were asking questions, and we're talking about pairing saisons and Belgian beers with things. Is how much does the carbonation level of the beer itself impact whether or not you think it's going to be good with some smoked meat, some sort of barbecue? Is carbonation important? Because you've gone Belgian with a lot of your answers, and those tend to be fairly carbonated. Does that help? Does that hurt? Where does that figure in, or does it?
The carbonation, in my opinion, at least, a lot of times when you hit with whether it's lagers or Belgians, whatever else, it tends to be a palate cleansing part of the experience. That's what the whole point of that carbonation is, to flow through and do that. Whether it adds to the experience, it depends on whether or not the beer is more overpowering or more just for that purpose.
I consider styles more than the carbonation itself.
But on the subject of carbonation, man, I actually heard an old interview you did, I think it was on Fox Business News with Cavuto, and he was talking wine and cheese pairing. And you said actually beer is a better pair for cheese because of the carbonation, correct?
That's true.
Yeah.
I think beer I think that's a broad generalization. I think that's a broad fact. Simply because the carbonation exists in beer that doesn't in wine, and it lifts the volatiles, the fats off the palate and allows for a full sensory experience. But I don't know that it's specific to any one food group like barbecue or cheese. I think it's the same for all foods, if that makes sense.
Sure, I got you. You were just using that example in the context of what
because cheese is like so rich and fatty in general, for the most part.
And what that lactose does to like the salivary glands and everything else, it helps. That the carbonation helps cut through a little bit more than the wine does.
Yeah, and there's the carbonic acid as well, but the point there was that the world, at least at that point, because that interview is like ancient now at this point.
Old times, man. We dig deep.
That's it. And it's like everybody at that point especially thought that wine and cheese was the ultimate pairing, and we were trying to introduce the world to craft beer and allow them to understand that beer is actually a much better, in general, pairing with food than wine.
And people are a lot more accepting of that now, that you can pair beer out
Correct.
there. So another question that I had for you guys that we didn't quite get to in the regular show, the new wave beers, I'm going to call them. And we brushed on that a little bit, but we're the Northeast IPAs, these hazy,
Devo.
Tropical, juicy ones. These, did you say Devo? It could be. Do they have a beer?
Devo beer.
Devo beer? You can
so you're calling them a one-hit wonder is what you're saying?
Oh, come on. Devo had a lot of hits.
Everybody knows Whip It, though. So for the non-hardcore Devo fans,
and Mother's Ball went to what show did he does a kid? He did what was the kid? Oh, with the big red pickle. What was the Yo Gabba Gabba? He was on Yo Gabba Gabba. Mark Mothersbaugh. He's a cool dude. Okay. Devo rocked, man. Devo was good. They did a lot of good stuff.
See, we're getting musical here. So,
what would you pair Devo with in terms of beer?
Yeah, Devo. What beer goes with Devo?
Whiskey.
Dude, whiskey is one of my favorite beers, man.
Right. What does whiskey not go with?
Right,
let's be honest.
Right. But these new wave beers, these Northeast IPAs, the hazy, the juicy. Let's kick it up and say the the milkshake IPAs, the heavily fruited, the smoothies. We're going to do it. Is there a place for those?
All right. Well,
in pairing,
there's a place for everything.
Well, especially with pairing. I mean, pairing
whether I like it or not is a different story.
Okay. Right. Exactly.
Personal taste aside,
that's right?
Well, I mean, and that's something we talked about earlier too, kind of off to the side, was that a lot of these things, with the milkshake IPAs and the smoothie IPAs, are they a style? Yes. Do we at this point even consider them beers in a traditional sense? No, not really. They're
define
more
style. That's the other thing too.
Right.
We could sit here and talk for the next 3 hours
if we get
about styles and what
that's why we see
style.
Like the BJCP guidelines changing. Is because you do evolve,
that's why you're going to see like those East Coast hazy IPAs.
Sure.
Like that will probably end up sticking as a generalized style in the same manner that a West Coast IPA has become a style versus other traditionals. But that doesn't mean that all of the sub-context, all of the overly fruited versions, all the extreme versions of the milkshake IPAs and everything else are going to maintain and have longevity.
Well, see, I think those are a fad. I think the New England IPA is, I don't know if normal is the right word. Normal enough, or it's enjoyable enough or traditional enough that it could maintain as a style.
Well, that's why the Brewers Association style guidelines changes every year. I judge at Great American Beer Fest, and every single year it gets more in depth and longer with more styles. Last year was 96 styles before sub styles, something like that.
That's a lot. Right?
And it's meant, unlike BJCP, which is more geared towards traditional styles and historical offerings, it's meant to reflect the actual marketplace. And the Brewers Association, the GABF guidelines, sort of is encompasses the macro view for the marketplace, the demographic in that given year. And Charlie Papazian is the guy who goes over the entire sort of country and looks at what's out in the market, and he deems whether something, with input from professional brewers, whether something should become a style in that guideline, which again is very different than BJCP, which is geared towards homebrewers.
Now, in either one of those guidelines, at this point, do they have, are white IPAs, black IPAs, are those still listed in those guidelines, or are those kind of gone by the wayside in the same manner that I would expect, like the milkshake and smoothie IPAs to go as well?
It's a good question. Honestly, each year it's different, and I try not to go over the IPA section too long or too hard.
Do they cut styles from the guidelines? Does some get some obscure that they're like, we don't need this anymore?
I think white IPA is still out there the last time I checked, but I'm not 100% sure. It's weird that's gone away, and now we have these hazy IPAs, because I'm thinking, guys, isn't it kind of...
Well, white IPA is almost more of a hoppy wheat than it is an actual IPA.
Yeah.
It's more of a wheat
but all IPAs are white. I don't really, except black IPAs, which, I fought against for a while, but
So I have a question about something I read or heard when I was looking at pairing barbecue with beer, and one of the guys that was talking about it that I ran into said that you had to watch out for some gotchas with wild beers and pairing that with barbecue. Are there gotchas? Are there issues with pairing wild to barbecue, like things you would avoid? Is there... What do you have to take into consideration with that?
Overly bready beers.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of wild or sour beers with barbecue. No, because the problem is this. Inherent to most funky, tart beers is a level of fruitiness, and I don't associate those flavor profiles with barbecue on any level. Yes, there is the standalone asset of the acidity that will cut through the fattiness of the barbecue. But the other burdens that come along with those particular styles, in my opinion, are cumbersome to pairing with meats. I don't get it. It doesn't. You can do it, and you'll be fine, and you'll still be happy at the end of the day. I can't wrap my brain around pairing.
Not even like a Flanders or a Creek or something.
No,
like
maybe
that?
with dessert.
Well, no,
with
see,
dessert?
actually, that's where I'll disagree. Is that situationally I'll disagree. As far as like a Flanders Red or something along those lines, like that style traditionally to me will pair well with if you're doing brisket, like that. Doing a beef. There's so many beef stews that the Belgians use using Flanders as a base beer, that inherently kind of helps that flavor profile. But as a general notion, I do agree that a lot of those sour notes will compete unnecessarily with the flavor profiles of the barbecue.
Yeah, there's a stew, and I may be getting the name wrong, but I think it's called like colonnade or something like that. That you take some crusty bread and smear mustard on it. You put, beef and potatoes and Flanders red, and just cook it slow, until it all thickens, and it's delicious.
And I think the difference is in cooking with something, a lot of those peripheral or residual flavors kind of cook out, whereas when you're drinking it in a glass, you get them full on. And in, say, a Flanders red, there's tons of tart cherry. And I can't see pairing tart cherry with anything other than like a dessert.
What about putting some Flanders red or a creek or something in my barbecue sauce?
That's a different story.
Again,
Absolutely.
but again, because that goes back to what I was saying.
Okay, sure.
With cooking with it, that's going to change the flavor profile of it. And again, the more when you're talking about Flanders reds, I would prefer a more aged version, like a Rodenbach vintage, something along those lines. Which
Alexander.
As much as I love the Alexander, that's almost got too much fruit.
Yeah,
but the vintage itself has just the right acidity to me that it will play against the fat, but not have an overly fruit component. Because again, you want to avoid, especially with all of the malt type of flavors, the brown sugars that you're going to get out of a barbecue sauce. The Flanders red won't play against that if it's not overly fruited.
So we're speaking of Flanders red, and I want to just throw out kind of a shout out to the Smyrna Craft Beer Market by Stout Brothers, because I'm pretty sure that's the first place I ever had Duchess, and that is where I developed a passion and a love for the Flanders style, or all standard styles.
Some would call it an obsession.
It's kind of, yes. I really love that, and I had it, I believe, the very first time, or the first time I took notice of it was at off the tap at your place. I think I bought a bottle to go or a growler to go. I've loved it ever since, and I kind of think of that as when I drink it, it's like, this is damn near liquid barbecue sauce, just about.
I could literally take a keg of almost anything of that style, whether it's from Duchess de Bourgogne or it's from Rodenbach, and just tap it room temperature with the tap going into my mouth on my couch, and just drink the keg and be absolutely fine with it. Like
you say, you could. I think that's probably happened before.
Like I plead the fifth.
All right, fair enough.
But what's the stuff that we just opened?
This is Yesternow from Orpheus, correct?
Which is
and that's spontaneous, Brian?
A traditionally spontaneous fermented wild ale aged 2 years in barrel. So I think it's a blend of 2 years. It's not a goose.
It makes me spontaneously happy.
Yeah. Oh, I love it.
Now, see, I've really been obsessed, talking about obsessions, with that smoked turkey we had earlier.
This is yummy.
I could see having some of that turkey in this specific beer and really enjoying that, right?
I could see it, because this isn't horribly, horribly fruity. It's kind of funky and tart, and it's got a malt backbone, and there is some citrus. You get a little bit of pineapple, a little bit of mango, but it's not like overpowering.
Right.
And I could see the acid from this kind of cutting through something else.
But the biggest difference, though, is that I couldn't see using that smoked turkey with the delicious barbecue sauces that are over there.
I agree.
I think they would fight. I think if you had more of a turkey gravy on that the fatness versus
go on.
Yes.
Go on. What's this?
Turkey gravy.
Hey, I need you to stop
turkey gravy and smoked turkey.
And seriously, this is for any turkey. I think this might be a little too much. This is a lot of beer for turkey, but it's so yummy.
But this would be, in my opinion, like a Thanksgiving beer. This would be perfect. With a little bit of cranberry sauce, smoked turkey, and a little gravy. Like, this would be awesome.
The rich gravy plate of turkey and all that. So
right, this has just the right amount of acidity and not too much fruit.
So, as I expected, with the fifth segment, going off the rails a little bit, we've gone from barbecue and beer to pairing with our Thanksgiving dinner.
Hey, well, it's all about food, and actually, it's just all about what's good.
I love smoked turkey.
Now I'm hungry again.
Yes,
deep fried and smoked turkey both, and smoked turkey is delightful. It works at Thanksgiving, too. It's not just a summer food.
Right.
Fried turkey's awesome. Too.
Fried turkey.
Oh, yeah.
It is. Absolutely.
How many
we did
deaths
Cajun
every year from that?
Burning down the house. So
seriously, we can't get to in the beginning of a Georgia summer when it's 95 out. we can't get to Thanksgiving fast enough for me.
No. That's see, I hate the cold weather. I'd rather be too hot than too cold.
Sorry.
You've been over there.
Relate. I cannot relate.
Fanning yourself like your auntie on Sunday church over there. So
killing me.
And I had to turn the fan off on you, Matt, because it was buzzing a little too loud for us here. So I apologize. Yeah. So. Damn it. But Brian, you got some more questions here?
I do actually. So whiskey. What are we pairing whiskey with? What kind of whiskeys do we want to pair with our different barbecues? We've got a lot of different options. We got chicken. We've got pork. We've got beef. We got.
Barbecue is one of the very few foods that will actually hold up to whiskey. I remember a few years ago when bourbon was getting big and they were doing bourbon and like bourbon dinners, and I'm like,
right,
you're on crack, people. They're like, what are you going to pair whiskey with? It's so huge, but it can work. I mean, it can work with certain foods, and barbecue is one of them.
And Scotch can be pretty light. I mean, they're using second run barrels. They're not really intense. Some of them are. You've got this, finished
Ipas.
On whatever, or your big peaty iodine. Yeah.
No, see, I don't think I could do. I don't want a hard liquored dinner. I don't want to do any pairing. Not me. There's
too much.
I know, Brian, you enjoy the steak and Scotch and whiskey dinners that they do down.
I like that a lot.
Down in Atlanta. Well, that's what they do: steaks and cigars and that. Yeah. So. And I mean, good steak, nice cigars, nice whiskeys. Yep. I just don't want them all at the same time.
Yeah.
So
I like all things at the same time. It's okay.
Just bring it on, huh?
So we're in agreement. I think across the table here, we're in agreement.
I mean, especially
you guys considered a date night.
I'm
throwing.
It might be first day.
I mean, we can discuss it.
Yeah,
all right,
exactly.
Cool. Good time to be had by all.
And you know what? You guys are really into aging beer. I just wanted to throw out there, since we're talking to you, some guidelines on aging beer. I just want to tack it on to the end of it. Not really related to barbecue.
Live your best life, Brian.
Yeah, Tim is looking disapprovingly at me.
I'm not. There was no disapproval at all. I
want to include this, and it's not. It's
to be
an
fair,
extra
we moved
segment.
into whiskey, so I mean, it's really at this point.
Turkey. And you guys are cellaring whiskey too. It's a different consideration, but
that's the beauty of whiskey.
That's for monetary whiskey.
Once it hits the bottle. 50 years from now, it'll be exactly the same as it was. That's it.
But in terms of beer, because we did open one from 1986, that was what was that?
The Anchor Christmas Ale.
That's right.
Our special ale.
How did you make that last?
Well, actually, that was given to me, if I recall correctly, by an Atlanta institution unto himself, Bob Pike.
I've heard of this guy.
Ex-Delta pilot, travels the world.
Part of the old man crew in Atlanta beer scene. Yes,
he is. He keeps going and going and going.
We've got a good delegation in that group.
It was given to me several years ago by him. I did some of the cellaring. He did some of the cellaring. But either way, that beer ages very well.
Surprisingly well.
And especially for its low ABV.
Yeah, seriously.
It's an anomaly. There are only a couple of beers that.
Right. And you have to know, if you drink a beer 32 years old, you have to kind of know what to expect.
Yeah,
from a beer that age, or you may be disappointed if you're expecting
to
have something fresh. But if you can appreciate the oxidation that comes along with it and the aging and that, it's very interesting and unique to drink. It's a great experience.
Yeah.
So
I mean, in general, you want high ABV over say 10-12% if you can. Inherent yeast, non-filtered or bottle conditioned if you can. The yeast tends to chew away at the residual sugars over time and allows it to age more gracefully. You want cool, dark, and by cool, cellar temperature, so 55, 60 degrees-ish.
Low light.
And and dark. But the cooler it is, the slower it will age and vice versa. So it won't necessarily harm a beer for it to be aged at 70, 75 degrees, but it's going to age a lot faster. And likewise, if you throw it in the fridge, it's going to take 40 years to age something. It'll still oxidize because there's inherent oxygen in the bottle from the bottling and conditioning process, all of that. But those are the things you generally want.
So if you wax dip your bottles, would that prevent it from doing any additional aging, or is that not even going to work?
Not
it's
really.
still oxygen permeable. So.
Oxygen permeable.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
One of the things I've noticed, though, too, is it's, in addition to all the things that you just mentioned, is the adjunct ingredients that are added to the beer. If you notice that things that are heavily coffeed, things along those lines, you really don't want to push those past 2 years of average cellaring, they tend to fall off pretty quickly, in my opinion, or my experience at least.
But coffee, vanilla, stuff
Vanilla-
like that. Nutty flavors. Vanilla will hang around a little bit,
hangs
right?
around a little bit longer, but
coffee
again,
moves pretty quick.
The coffee and
Even bourbon.
hazelnuts,
Even bourbon dies down
will die
over
pretty
time.
quick.
That coffee turns into green peppers, I think.
It
or
can get very
green
peppery.
beans or something
It can do
like that.
that.
Yeah.
It goes very vegetal at that point. I think that's almost it feeds the wrong bacteria in the
you
barrel.
can't
at that
escape
point.
it almost, even in
Right.
good beers.
Well, guys, I think that we have given some darn good information on beer and barbecue and turkey dinners and sitting on your couch and chugging a keg and aging beer. So I think we've covered a smorgasbord of topics today.
Literally.
So I want to thank you again for joining us, guys, for hanging out for the 5th segment. And to our listeners, thanks for joining in. If you're listening this far along, thanks for hanging out with us. And make sure to tune in next week for the Beer Guys Radio Show. Cheers.